Right beside old Unit 3 sits a shell-marked waste you see. Tanks of resin stacked with care, holding what the pumps caught there. TEPCO field 2 plans to show. One says yes, the other no. Each awaits a coming call. Neither clears the path at all. So they say, when the work might get underway. Decommission down the line, mid-century's hopeful sign. 880 tons remain, none retrieved from 3's domain. They debate what space to claim, still the Buildington stays the same. From Unit 2, a careful shot, not from 3, not from 4. Still they work around the door, less than a gram. Still asking for
Hello. Hi everybody, I'm Dana Durnford. You can call into these shows. Unlike the nuclear industry, we don't hide away from anybody. They screwed that up already today. I did, just bear with me. 709-740-4076. And that was, sound we just listened to was less than a gram. I'll put a link here in a second in the chat room. And if you're watching this after, you're going to have to wait 12 hours before that link will show up. So the song is called Less Than a Gram. And you can find it at James Lucid site, Corium Records on YouTube. And download that song, put it on your kids and your loved ones' phones. Make them listen to it. Make them listen to it. Just to open and expand their minds, for goodness sakes. All right, let's go backwards. So the poll tonight, I'll find it for you. Is it time for a last goodbye to the man-made atom? It never, ever brought peace. And so after 80 years of being mocked and dishonored and attacked and damaged and injured by this industry, at what point are you going to make a stand? At what point? What does it take for you to make a stand on this planet? And the insult is even worse than that. When you take your loved ones, you trust your doctors, you trust the nuclear industry, and because you're a sucker. It's not your fault. The industry has socially engineered you to be a sucker. You're actually a good person. I know you are. But this industry has divided us. And so when you take your loved ones to the hospital, you expect them, they got cancer, for goodness sakes, and your child or your family, your parents, your significant others, your aunts, your uncles, whatever the case may be, it's always the same story, though. And it's a difficult subject to talk about, I'm sure. But what I'm going to show you is life-changing, it's revolutionary. Nobody's ever done this for you before. And that's humiliating. And there's a lot of that, unfortunately, when we look at the nuclear industry. So when you take your loved ones to the hospital and they're going to treat them, they're going to treat them with radiation for cancer. Now, most of the radiation worldwide that's causing cancer, or most of the cancer worldwide, is directly attributed to radioactive fallout, 80 years of emissions from 1,000 fuel pools. Every fuel pool is destroying your city and your country and your planet. And it doesn't just attack humans, it attacks every species. So think about this now. You got your loved ones or yourself or whoever got cancer, and there's no cure for it, of course, only nuclear, which caused it in the first place. And so, doctor, there's got to be something we can do. And the doctor said, well, if you sign this piece of paper waiving your rights or your loved one's rights, there is an experimental technique, radiation. It's known to have some success. Not known to cure, but it's known to have some success. I never heard the word, it's known to cure. Impaired wound healing after radiation therapy. So radiation therapy. So this part is so important to the rest of the story that we tell every day, that we talk about every day. It's the very foundation of one of the reasons that I do what I do, because of the genocides in your hospital. But it turns out the genocide is unimaginable that we're seeing going on. It's epidemic worldwide of species and people. So anthropogenic man-made radiation attacks everything with replicating cells. So why would you put that in your body and call it a therapy? Think about that statement. Stay around for the show. Estimated radiation-associated cancer risk among injured children treated at different trauma centers. So trauma is usually associated with what? Car accidents, school accidents, biking accidents, sports accidents. Not cancer. You don't go to the trauma center for cancer, right? On top of that, look at the people. Under each of these academic studies is going to be a list of people that they had to, they're raising their kids, paying mortgages, car payments, insurance payments, dental payments for their kids, the sports for their kids, the music for their kids, the private school, their vacations, their exorbitant weekend parties, etc., etc. Their extravagant lifestyles. Each of these people, that's what the money they're doing, that's what that's buying. And all you got to do is keep telling you a lie. That's all you got to do. And then you got to do that once a year, once every 2 years, and they'll make enough money then to live happily ever after. The kids will go to college for free, and they'll get the same job that you're going to retire from. Several decades after radiation therapy, and they still haven't cured anybody. And they do it in every hospital on the planet, particularly the gullible countries, the impoverished countries. Oh, please, Mr. America, Mr. Canada, can you please help us? Our loved ones are dying of cancer. Nothing to do with the rice from Japan. It's not a very good joke, but it is kind of a joke if you've been around a while. Several decades after radiation therapy, they still haven't cured anybody. So all of these studies are meant to downplay the adverse side effects, because there really isn't any, according to the experts. But when you watch this, you're left with a single indelible impression that statement is is pathologically wrong. Radiation-induced chronic arterial injuries, that's your heart valves. Really, radiation could do that, Dana? Oh, you have no idea. Surgical treatment of intestinal radiation injuries. Radiation injury, radiation therapy. I can't tell the difference. Can you tell the difference? Late radiation-induced rectal injury. That's my favorite. I know how many people I wish would get that. After treatment of carcinoma of the uterus. So not radiation cured, not radiation stabilization or anything of. It's always the only outcome with radiation therapy, radiation injuries, radiation-induced skin wounds. Look at the people in the studies, all these people in the studies. Their job is to protect the nuclear industry, and there's millions of these people. And they produce more studies than you can even comprehend. Microwave-induced brain injuries. They get you everywhere you can. Get rid of your microwave, for God's sakes. It destroys Minami. If you use it allegedly correctly, it'll destroy 84% of the nutrients in your food. And if you leave it in there for 30 seconds past the recommended amount, you'll get more nutritional lick in the stamp. Summary of symposium. So why would you do that to your food? What did the food ever do to you to deserve that? Summary, and they do that to your food coming across the borders. Or that's going to your children, to protect your children. Let's destroy all the nutrients in your food and then give it to the children. That way they don't grow up and figure out what we're doing. Summary of symposium on acute radiation-induced injury. Summary of a symposium on acute radiation-induced injuries. A symposium. Why would you have a symposium on radiation injuries, I wonder? Acute radiation injuries. Is there any other? Induced injuries. The peaceful atom fades and the truth remains. And this is what you're seeing tonight. The horror of the truth is something to behold. So why would you go to the hospital and do this to your loved one? Because you don't know this is happening, do you? You go and get radiation therapy and you get everything else. You'll get 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different tumors next month or the month after or the day after. Microwave radiation injuries. Not the day after, obviously. But all of a sudden, within the next couple of years, you got 6, 7, 8, 9 tumors. And they ain't fun ones. There is no such thing as a fun one, but microwave radiation injuries. Surgical treatment of radiation injuries of the colon and rectum. Well, they really got some asphyxiation with your rectums, I can tell you that much. A lot of them probably grew up wishing they were abducted by a UFO and given a rectal inspection. Radiation-induced ocular injuries in the dogs. And if you look at the studies on radiation in dogs, it's just disgusting what they do. It's disgusting. So you got a whole bunch of scientists in laboratories, say, doing 150 dogs at a time, and it's cruel. It's torture. In any other environment, it's torture. If you do 1/5 of what they do, or 1/100th of what they do to the animals with radiation, you do to cause distress to a dog, that's animal abuse. And so they must sit around the lunch table laughing their heads off sometimes. They'll pull the teeth out of the dogs so the dogs can't bite them. They'll feed them diarrhea like food. Radiation-induced ocular injuries to their eyeballs. Radiation-induced insufficiency fractures of the femur 18 years after radiation therapy. Come get you anyway. At some point, it's going to get you. Going to come back and it'll destroy you. Radiation-induced insufficiency fractures of your femur. That's a nasty one. Radiation injuries to the nervous system. But very, very little is known about anthropogenic man-made radiation, of course. Early radiographic changes in radiation bone injuries. Of course, there's not very little known about it. So, all the tests were done on a single healthy male. Radiation-induced cognitive impairments. Particularly senior citizens in there, right? They worked all their life, and now they end up with some cancer, and The doctor says, well, we can treat it. And now they can't have a retirement anymore now. They destroyed it and they have to liquidate their assets so they can get another year out of their radiation-destroyed bodies. Radiation injury in the human kidneys. Seems to me, like if you're being honest, doesn't it seem an awful lot like radiation and destroys your body? And everything in your body? Or am I just being a drama queen or something? Radiation injuries are the lowest digestive tracts. Very, very little is known about radiation, of course. Radiation injuries to the optic nerves. Just let me see if I can find Jacqueline. I can't remember. We didn't do that there a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't look. I couldn't remember the name. Just let me see if I can get my little pea brain here to work. Oh. What's the odds? I got her. Because that's kind of important for... Let me try it this way. Here we go. But don't worry, very little is known. And I'll tell you how much is known about... So after Fukushima, MIT, Stanford, Oxford, Yale, Berkeley, all the shakers and movers had, within a month or less, had posted updates on Fukushima. And we challenged, you can find them in my playlist, there's 3 videos that we challenged every lie they told in their presentations on Fukushima. And Jacqueline Yates was brought into one of them. She's going to explain to you. Now, I think this is MIT. They brought her in on phone, very, very terrible connection. Ignore all of this. To the university that's full of nuclear scientists, full of nuclear experts, and they brought in Jacqueline Yates. Oh, is that her name? Yanch, Y-A-N-C-H. I got to adjust the volume. I'll start again. I don't see a phone. Jackie. Now, this is MIT. Why wouldn't they use their own nuclear scientists and academics or alumni that was local? Why would they bring someone in on a shitty phone call? And they say very little is known about man-made radiation. There was only one study, only one study on the effects of radiation on the human. Is that what you're saying? Well, yeah, that's what she's saying. You've seen all the studies I showed you at this point. I'll show you more. Also, possibly on the phone, although I don't see a phone. This is after Fukushima, the first week or 2. Jackie Yanch, who's in Spain. Jackie, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Fantastic. And so why did they laugh? Did you laugh that time? Did you blow up laughing? Was that hilarious? Look at them all there. Let's do that again. Jackie, are you there? Yes, I'm here. Then everybody blows up laughing. Jackie Yanch, who's in Spain. Jackie, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Fantastic. Until last year, Jackie laughing? Was a professor. Why is she laughing? Why are they laughing? What was the joke, right? Because 19,000 people just got murdered by a tsunami, and America just got buried in radioactive fallout. I'll shut up. I'll get out of the way. I'll do the best I can. Nothing's guaranteed around here. And we'll play the rest of it. Also, possibly on the phone, although I don't see a phone, Jackie Yanch, who's in Spain. Jackie, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Fantastic. Until last year, Jackie was a professor in the Department of Nuclear Science and Engineering. She continues to be affiliated with us, and she's a specialist on radiation health effects.
I'm here. I'm sorry, I didn't quite get the question.
The question had to do with what are the prospects for long-term contamination in the area around the reactor. I think that was the question.
In terms of the amount of release or the consequences of a release? I mean, there's been very little that seems to have been released and dispersed beyond the containment. Now, unfortunately, we have very little data, almost no data about how much radiation we can live with in terms of elevated background levels. All of our data about the health effects of radiation come from a situation in which all the dose is delivered in less than a minute. And so we just don't know how much radiation can be, what kind of contamination level can be considered safe. I mean, some parts of the world are at natural dose rates which are 40 times the dose rates we're living with, 40 times the dose rate Japan has as a natural background level, and no adverse effects have been noted. But as I say, there has not been a careful study of just how much is too much. And there's going to be a trade-off between having people leave their homes forever or for long periods of time and living with an elevated background level. And we don't know whether, we don't really know, like I said, how much is too much to live with.
I think many of our students may not know that there's a long history of close ties between MIT and Japan.
So that was, she kept saying natural background, elevated levels and stuff like that. And 20 times, like she's talking about Iran. But that's natural stuff. That's not man-made stuff. You can't, right? It's not illegal to do what she's doing because it's not a crime to murder you with radiation, to kill you with radiation. So hang on a second now.
Possibly.
Come from a situation in which all the dose is delivered in live with in terms of elevated background levels.
All right, I'm just going to chop that out because I kind of need that to reoccur a few times.
All of our data about the health effects of radiation come from a situation in which all the dose is delivered in less than a minute. And so we just don't know how much radiation can be, what kind of contamination level can be considered safe.
Okay, we'll just stop it right there. All right, here we go. Bear with me. I got a plan. There is a plan. All right, here we go.
All of our data about the health effects of radiation come from a situation in which all the dose is delivered in less than a minute.
Radiation injury to the spinal cord.
We just don't know how much
radiation injuries to the central nervous
system. What kind of contamination level can be
radiation therapy induced cardiac injuries.
And all of our data about the health effects of radiation come from a situation in which all the dose is delivered in less than a minute. And so
radiation therapy induced cardiac injuries.
How much radiation can be
radiation injuries in the intestinal
contamination level can be considered safe. And all of our
radiation
data
pulmonary
about
injuries.
The health effects of radiation come from a situation in which all the
radiation induced lung injuries
in less than a minute.
Radiation
and
injury
so
to the growth
we just
plate.
Don't know how
it's radiation-induced spinal cord injuries. Just millions of these studies.
Contamination level can be considered safe.
And so this was MIT brought in a professional hitman, right? That's a serial killer. What she done there? She disarmed people that went to MIT, watched their presentation, and bought into their lies. And then probably took the children and family on a vacation to Japan and ate nasty food. And when he came back, one or more of them had debilitating injuries for the rest of their lives. And this has played out millions, what is it, 48 million people went there last year. More than ever pre-Fukushima. That's how good their campaign is. They're selling more food from the nuclear wasteland than they sold before the reactors melted down. Late radiation injuries after post-operative radiotherapy of breast cancer. Oh, I got another idea. Just bear with me. You'll figure it out in a second. So very little is known. Do you believe that story now? Was that convincing? They don't know nothing about what I'm showing you? That's MIT. MIT. Just hang on a second. I want to hear that Jackie, are you there? One more time.
Jackie was a professor in the Department of Nuclear Science and Engineering. She continues to be affiliated with us, and she's a specialist on radiation health effects.
Hang on.
I'm here. I'm sorry, I didn't quite get the question.
The question had to do with what are the prospects for long-term contamination.
I smurfed that up one more time. I know it's worded. Just give me a second. I think you'll agree with me.
Department of Nuclear Science and Engineering. She continues to be affiliated with us, and she's a specialist on radiation health effects.
So the one who's telling you there's no radiation health and effects, she's a specialist in that. And she's telling you that nothing happened. And I put pictures alongside of it, right?
Yes.
Okay, I think I got it now.
I'm here. I'm sorry, I didn't quite get the question.
The question had to do with what are the prospects for long...
I done it again? What's the odds? Oh, I should have been right there.
Long-term contamination in the area around the reactor. I think that was the question. Also, possibly Spain. Jackie, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Fantastic.
Okay, that's what we were looking for. That little cut right there. This is going to be so good.
Also, possibly on the phone, although I don't see a phone.
I'm here. I'm sorry, I didn't quite get the question.
The question is long-term contamination. Also, possibly on the phone, although I don't see a phone. Jackie Yanch, who's in Spain. Jackie, are you there?
Okay, that's what we wanted right there.
Yes, I'm here.
Fantastic.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm here.
Fantastic.
All right, so let's go. So very little is known about radiation. Brain radionecrosis after adjuvant radiation therapy. Radiation-induced death. Very, very little is known, Jackie. Right, Jackie?
Yes, I'm here.
Fantastic.
Radiation-induced skin necrosis. Very little is known. Jackie's a specialist. Did I mention that? She's a specialist in radiation effects. Radiation injury, but so very little is known. Everything is known as on a 1-minute experiment on a healthy 22-year-old male. So but very little is known.
Yes, I'm here.
Fantastic.
Surgical treatment of chest wall radiation-induced injuries. Surgical treatment of chest wall from radiation-induced injuries. So, is it safe to say radiation attacks you? Is that safe to say? Late radiation rectal injuries. Late. Oh, honey, you're cured. When are you coming home? I'll be home in a month, sweetie. So a month goes by and he comes home, and then a few months later, He has late radiation rectal injuries, and he has radiation-induced soft tissue injury to the head and neck, and he has radiation-induced brain injury from the radiation, of course. And you have cognitive impairment from radiation therapy. Radiation therapy. Radiation death. Get rid of the word death. Put in radiation therapy. Come on, bring your kids. It'll be a party. These are ruthless monsters. And then
Yes, I'm here.
Fantastic.
You do it, Jackie? We did it when now?
Yes, I'm here.
Fantastic.
Okay. Let me chop it right there. We turn it up, and now watch this effect. You like this? Very little is known about radiation, right? Injury to the brain from radiation therapy. Microwave-induced brain injuries. They don't know much about it. That one doesn't, and that one doesn't, and Zing doesn't, and Wei Ji doesn't, and Xinomi doesn't, and Zhao Wang Ming doesn't know. Very little is known. All these different countries have studied it, and every one of them showed that the worst thing you can do is irradiate a human, or anybody, or any species. Mitigate radiation-induced brain necrosis, an experimental study, 2020. Oh, yeah, I've been at it for 80 years, so hopefully it gets it right in the next couple of thousand years. No rush. It's just millions of people a day's lives. Test battery for assessment of radiation-induced brain injuries. Yummy. Radiation is your best friend. I'd rather get fucking 10 vaccines than that fucking shit. Excuse me. Radiation-induced normal brain injuries. Did you know there's a normal brain injury? I didn't know there was a normal brain injury. Radiation-induced brain injuries. What am I, an idiot or something? I should have known that one. Ionizing radiation-induced brain injuries. Okay, but I'm making a point here. Wait, this is not going to go all night like this. Bear around, hang around. There is something to be learned here you've never learned before. Brain tumor progression from radiation injuries after cranial irradiation. Your head, the bones of your head. And the most vulnerable, the skinniest bones. Well, if we radiate the cranial, we'll radiate the brain even better. That way a tumor can't grow there, see, Dana? It just grows up in your rectum and everywhere else, right? And the sad thing about that is I'm not trying to be funny. I'm being honest. It was like, why do all the Catholics priests, why is there no more midnight mass in Newfoundland, Canada? And I was talking to my brother, right, in Newfoundland, and he said, I blew up laughing at him because it was absurd. He doesn't talk like that ever. I said, what are you laughing about? He said, that was the headline of the story tonight on the major media here, is the Catholic priests all got to be back in jail by 12 o'clock, so there's no more midnight mass. They weren't trying to be funny. They had to sell all the graveyards, all the dioceses, the accommodations for the Catholic priests, if that's what they really are, and all the churches and all their properties had to be sold to pay for all the victims that they buggered on the east coast of Canada for decades. All the children that they buggered, right? The altar boys. And the headline, which was pro-Catholic, typically, was... The first sentence was, why... The reason there will be no midnight mass in Newfoundland anymore for a while is because all the priests have to be back in jail by midnight. And it was at that moment I realized not everybody can trust the system that has been around for too many years, right? Radiation-induced brain injuries. Clinical approaches to reduce brain radiation injuries. Clinical Approaches, May 2012. So one thing all of these stories got in common about radiation therapy is none of it's therapy, all of it's an experiment. None of it works. So here's a study. Let's try to figure this out, guys. Let's go down and we'll have team meetings in Barbados. Some jet skiing, we're going to rent out the submarines and get down and radiotherapy. So there's chemoradiotherapy also. So if you can't get you to take radiation or your loved ones, what they'll do is start you out on chemicals. A few chemicals here, a couple of chemicals there. There's a little bit of mustard gas from World War II here, because most chemo's basic is mustard gas, which is illegal to use more, but they stick it in your body to call it a cure. Because you're fucking gullible. You won't stand your ground. Study on radiation-induced brain injuries after radiotherapy. Radiation-induced brain injuries. Are you seeing a pattern in all of these studies tonight? Reoccurring brain tumors. I wonder how Jacqueline Reoccurring brain tumors from radiation injuries. Reoccurring. Now, that's the gallows laugh. I'm not laughing because it's funny, because I can tell you it is not funny. But I'm going to make you a point. I need you to see all of this first. Radiation-induced brain injury. After stereotactic radiosurgery of the brain. Radiosurgery of the brain. Radiosurgery of the brain. Sounds pretty cool, right? Hey, Tim, you want some radiosurgery of the brain? Jacqueline's going to be in charge. Now, if you met Jacqueline, what would you probably say to her? Not very nice things, would it be? Very little is known about radiation, Dana. Language decline after brain radiation therapy. That's just so many studies like that, but yet they still do it every hospital on the entire planet. Oh, you need some radiation brain therapy there, mister. Sign the dotted line. What's that for, doctor? Oh, it's all just so you can't sue me. When your loved ones, if your loved ones die, you know. It's experimental. How long has it been experimental, doctor? 81 years. 81 years, yeah, since we started. It's been experimental. Isn't there other stuff that could work? Oh, no. Insurance only covers radiation. $900,000, actually just enough to flatten line your loved ones. Radiation-induced brain injuries. Radiation-induced brain injuries. Brainstem injuries. Did I mention there was brain injuries from radiation? Brainstem injuries after intensive modulated radiation therapy. Yeah, we whopped him with like 70 sieverts. He's fucking still alive, too. It's crazy. He must be good genes. Modification radiation-induced brain injuries. These are sick people, eh? Imagine doing this to other people, then doing a study on it, making a fortune, and not caring. Not acknowledging. Like the rate of suicide among these people is very, very low. They don't have a conscience. They were basically autistic, functional, and the universities couldn't get rid of them. They kept getting degree after degree. And they said, hey, you know, the nuclear industry is looking for some people. They'll take care of you, tie your shoes, feed you breakfast. When you're old enough, you can take care of yourself. What do you say, Timmy? Is it time to move up into the big school? I love radiation. Radiation's terrible. Radiation's great. Now, Timmy, these women there, they said that you're a freak. Let's give them some radiation-induced brain injuries from the proton radiotherapy. You have no idea how twisted and demented, sick these people actually are. Radiation-induced brain injuries. So radiation seems to have one attribute that stands out as thick as anything. Radiation-induced brain injuries. Very little is known about radiation, Dana. Very, very little is known about radiation. It's very little. It's tiny. Such a tiny, 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 tiny. Da 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 da. Radiation-induced brain injuries. Did I mention that tonight? Experimental study on acute brain radiation injuries. Okay. Cheng Zhonglin. Rang Dong. These people worldwide are doing the same studies, coming up with the same statistics. Huh. I'm beginning to think that there's something a little bit unusual going on with these people. Radiation-induced bile duct injuries. Like, then the other question is, how many injuries can I get from radiation? Well, I'm not finished yet. Hang on. Liver disease from radiation therapy. Salivary glands during radiation. Acute injuries of your glands during radiation therapy. Radiation lung injuries. Damn, radiation rectal injuries. There's a lot of those rectal injuries. Radiation injuries to the central nervous system. It covers all bases. There's nothing on your body that thing doesn't destroy at some point. Patient with radiation-induced bowel injuries. Radiation injuries to the heart valves. Spinal cord recovery from radiation injuries. Look at all these academics and PhDs and MDs and BSs. But very little is known about radiation, except for all of this stuff, of course. Radiation-induced rectal injuries. Don't worry, MIT loves you. They're not sadistic monsters. You can tell by the Fukushima presentation that they've done how just wonderful these people actually are. They're wonderful. They're wonderful. Mom, Dana's getting weird again. So if you come into my playlist, I got something sneaky there. Audit of Harvard, MIT, and Stanford University. And I've done this a lot of times over the years. But you come and watch them. If you really want to see, we audit their presentations for Fukushima. They're linked to the original stories. We play the videos. And if you tell a lie, I'll stop the video, show you the evidence of why that's a lie, and then we'll move back into the video again. I'm pretty fast, pretty smooth. I like what I'm doing. That helps. I'm a nerd. Blah, blah, blah. But that's important because it shows you the consistency of the lies from all the institutions. This particular site, as I showed you last night, I used to have 25,000 subscribers. This site, I have 5 videos with over 1,000 views. The rest of them are under. I have over 1,000 videos, presentations like this. But to say nothing has gone viral is an understatement. Hello, everybody. Yeah, I call it. Colette was saying, except for Madame Curie, when we were talking about the health effects, because she lost both of her hands, can't even wipe her own arse when she was older. So how could Jacqueline Yates ignore that? That was only radium, which is still bad, don't get me wrong, clearly, if you lose both your hands. What would you rather do, have a Nobel Prize or be able to wipe your own fucking arse? Tie up your own shoes? I'm just saying, putting that out there in the ether. Let's keep going. We're almost there. 5. Yeah, not bad. Getting there. And then I'll show you why I'm showing you all of this. Radiation-induced brain necrosis. Did I ever mention that one before? You can ask all these people from all these different countries done the same study with the same results. Why are they still doing it? Well, because we can get funding for it, Dana. Radiation-induced intestinal syndromes. And if you don't believe me, look at all these people. They wouldn't lie to you. They love you. They like to give you some rectal injuries where they can. 95 radiation-related breast injuries. There was a lawsuit. There was over 10 million women in the United States had their breasts removed and didn't have breast cancer. It's just an easy surgery. Quick dollar. There goes the breast. There goes the breast. Here's some Band-Aids. Get lost. These are ruthless people. Radiation injuries. I never heard of that one before. Did you hear that before? I never heard of radiation injuries to the small bowels. Radiation-induced regional lung injuries. The assessment of radiation-induced brain injuries. Why would you assess that for? Because there's thousands and thousands and thousands of studies showing the same thing every single time. Properties protect the lungs from radiation-induced injuries, but you can get radiation therapy at the local hospital anywhere you are on this planet. It's therapy, Dana. Injuries to the cranial nerve from proton beam radiation therapy. As long as you get the word radiation in there and therapy in there, it doesn't matter. You put proton beams, chemo radiation, whatever you want in that pile, and it's legal. It's totally legal, because if it was illegal to harm you with radiation, you couldn't do any of this to people. So they made sure they changed the laws to make it legal to poison you with radiation. In other words, there's no law that makes it illegal to poison you with radiation. If it was illegal to poison you with radiation, they couldn't touch you in the hospitals with this stuff. Central nervous system radiation injuries. So is this not worth fighting for? Is the fact that this is entrenched into our societies worldwide as the norm, and only because the population is ignorant. They don't understand this is happening. They don't understand it so much, they'll voluntarily kill their loved ones with it as fast as you can get a spot open at the hospital. Like, all the big hospitals have a floor for these people to die on. Collects their urine and their excrements because they're radioactive too. Didn't cure anybody, and which is evident in the millions of studies. The millions. And then if you look at all the other countries, India and Pakistan and China and Russia and France and United Kingdom, everybody else in Canada had done studies showing this stuff has never cured anybody. At what point is it too much? Because if this is what they want to do with you, you come to the hospital, you usually get sick from radiation poisoning because you got 1,000 fuel pools hemorrhaging into the environment. It breaks my heart all day, every day, and all night, every night. I wake up horrified, and I go to bed horrified for about 25 years. And I can't look away. I just can't fucking turn my back. The breast radiation injury litigation. You have no idea how much that tears me up. Radiation-induced kidney injuries. Radiation-induced kidney injuries. Is there anything in your body it doesn't... And they call it injury because that's a polite way of saying a death sentence. Laser treatment of severe radiation injuries of your lower gastrointestinal tract. Laser treatment of severe radiation injuries. So they know you're going to get a severe radiation injuries because I got all those studies showing you they know. Despite what Jacqueline Yates says at MIT, who's a radiation specialist and is brought in by the big guns, by the university itself, to deceive you, to hoodwink you, to lull you into complacency, which works spectacularly, I'm sure, and they knew it would. That offends me. I can't sit there and accept that when it's not true. I can't justify silence. It's wrong, and it's murder, It's genocide. Radiation therapy is genocide. Laser treatment of severe radiation injuries of the lower gastrointestinal tract. Nothing works, and so let's finish them off. They have severe radiation injury. That means you're dying. And you're dying of a gut. Your organs, your intestines are basically melting. Radiation-induced bowel injuries. Radiation-induced lung injuries. Barrier disruption, central nervous system, radiation injuries. It's not radiation-induced injuries, it's radio-induced death. Because you die from that. It's not an injury, it's an injury you're going to die for that you didn't have before and you shouldn't have died for. And if you do live for a little while, the integrity of your life is zero. Right? Like, just a chemotherapy was a 2% survival rate of over 5 years. If you don't take it, your survival rate over 5 years is 90-something%. But when people have a trigger mechanism built into them through this industry and the indoctrinations through Hollywood and schools and universities and popular icons, that cancer has to be assaulted with radiation immediately, and that's the only solution. And that's enforced with healthcare providing up to almost $1 million per person, say in Canada anyway, for cancer. Now, if your child is diagnosed with cancer, say at 12 or 15 or 16 or whatever, and then the only treatment your healthcare will pay for is radiation. And as you see, that's not a very good option. That's the equivalent of murder. That's the equivalent of murder. Hypoxia, of course, because you're killing all the red blood cells in your body. So all you have is white blood cells. Red blood cells carry oxygen nutrition. So that's why the hypoxia is, almost everybody ends up with that. Radiation-induced kidney injuries. I mean, it's horrifying. And people just seem to accept it. It has no shock value whatsoever. Radiation-induced cardiac injuries following treatment of breast cancer from radiation. So you got the breast cancer treated, so-called. Now you got a heart attack. There's no radiation therapy. Radiation injuries to the heart. What's going on is it's an epidemic. Introduction to radiation injuries, another silent epidemic. All right. Okay. That was a little bit. Don't worry, there's some logic in my insanity. All right. So you've seen radiation effects on a human. Pretty nasty, right? That's pretty nasty. Okay. So here's another radiation injury. This is radioactive fallout. And I'll argue this is actually worse. Because we had an event in 2011 in Japan at the Fukushima Daiichi site. So this was a study showing 1 million atoms per square meter. That's underground stuff. We have another study based from TEPCO's releases. Now, they don't include the actual inventories. What I mean by that is there was 4 reactors. Here's 2 obvious ones, reactor 3 and reactor 4, that you can clearly see are destroyed. Now, the buildings were 190 feet, 19 stories, 65 meters tall, 150 feet wide, 50 meters wide. And at the top of the buildings was 3 decades of reactor cores. And so every decade, there's about 5.5 reactor cores go to the tops, 150, 160 feet up of these buildings. And then it's the roof above it. So it's a 190-foot, 19-story building. Think of a 19-story apartment building. Look up pictures of a 19-story apartment building if you have a hard time imagining that. Now, there's 4 of these reactors, so you'd have 9 reactors and 9 more reactor cores if you lowball the numbers of reactor cores. We know currently there's reactors in Japan that have no more room for fuel. So when you take the reactor out of the reactor core, out of the operating machine that's producing power for 1 million homes and businesses, you've got to keep it underwater, and these particular designs are at the top of the buildings. And there could be up to 15 reactor cores at the top of each of the buildings. But let's say there is 9. Let's lowball the numbers. Because they don't have a repository, they have one pool there where older fuel can be put to, is known as a common spent fuel pool. It's not that big, and it was located right across the road from this reactor and that reactor. And the tsunami ran through these buildings also, right? So they disabled the buildings, they had no function. And if water's not circulating, the reactor cores will melt down. Each reactor core, when you take it out, is still producing splitting atoms that would normally boil water to power 1 million homes and businesses. So if you got 9 reactor cores at the top of this building, that means you're still splitting atoms for 9 million homes and businesses. But it's not under pressure, it's not under 1,000 pounds per square inch, and it's not also artificially inflated temperatures, right? But so the atoms are not contained any longer. Not that they're really contained in the other way, by the way. In a running reactor, you'd be surprised how much is getting released. And now that it's out, it's in a pool, there's no containment. There's tall, skinny stacks close proximity to these buildings, and that's where they'll pump out the fuel pool emissions. The fuel pool are boiling off 120,000 liters a day out of each pool. So there's 2 pools at the top of each of the buildings. I'm going to bring up the calculator. Let's just look at this number, because people still can't wrap their mind around how much water we're talking about. Each liter of water is hundreds of trillions of anthropogenic, harmful, man-made atoms that'll go out and look for anything it can destroy and attacks everything with replicating cells. So divide that by 24 hours. And that's 5,000 liters an hour. 5,000 liters an hour. So let's divide that by 60 minutes in an hour. So each minute, there's 83 liters evaporated up. Now, if I took that 83 liters out of the pool and wasted it, say, or just driving down the road in your community with it trickling out the window all the way down on the sidewalk, the whole length of your main street, you wouldn't be allowed on that street ever again. That would be a nuclear wasteland full of uranium, plutonium. The biggest byproduct, by the way, is the curium isotopes. So you're still producing the atoms. They're sucked up in the water. The fuel is still splitting atoms. It's in the water. The water is boiling off 83 liters a minute. It's going up these tall, skinny stacks. So they actually produce, each of these buildings after 30 days will produce a plume that looks like that covering the entire planet. There's 1,000 fuel pools worldwide doing that currently. Continuous plumes. It's because it's continuously hemorrhaging out of the facility. And anthropogenic man-made isotopes are the only pollution that we produce that symmetrically can cover the whole planet, and will, because it's so tiny. It's not like a big particulate from a factory or automotive or something like that. You're talking about, like cesium-137 is a great example. All the atoms are the same size. So you can put 200 million atoms on the head of a needle, but you can't see it. One of them can give you a cancer, any one of them. And the reason being is each of them can pulse energy, say, 600 feet every second. So if it's in your body, it's destroying chromosomes, cells, DNA. If it's in any species, it's doing the same thing. Their bodies are going to try to repair that every second. They can't keep up with that with white blood cells. And they're going to attack the source every second because it's pulsing energy in every direction. So it's destroying chromosomes, DNA, cells throughout your whole body every second. And so for the rest of your life, you have less red blood cells carrying oxygen and nutrition, and more white blood cells, which are trying to repair the damage but can't possibly keep up with it. So it's accumulative every day from the rest of your life. But because you're talking about so much from so many sources, and it's very subtle. So it takes many decades, and we're already up to 8 of them. And now we're seeing, right away in the 70s, we started seeing the cancer epidemic from all the open-air nuclear testing. But we are able to quantify all of this in many different ways. So the radioactive fallout is well known. So when you look at this study here, this was a Canadian study of 20 million particles of radioactive particles. That's a really interesting way to phrase this. By the way, the biggest byproducts are not iodine-131 or any other iodine. It's curium isotopes. Curium isotopes are the major byproduct in the radiated nuclear fuel, not iodine. And curium isotopes need lead shielding 20 times thicker than you do for plutonium. And plutonium, 144 dogs with the Loveless Respiratory Research Institute New Mexico study, for instance, and they've done 90-something of these studies with Dr. Raymond Gilmedy, it killed all the animals. 144 dogs, 93 dogs had skeleton tumors, bone tumors. But it also meant they were producing radioactive stem cells immediately for the rest of their life after the exposures. Which also mean, if in nature, if you're getting a dose, you're also getting gammas, for instance, which means you're producing radioactive hormones also, your kids and your loved ones, for the rest of their lives and your souls. And now we are in a tipping point. We have reached a tipping point. And I'm not some meek, mousy person that the industry can coerce or weaponize or take advantage of. That's why I do the things I'm doing. That's why I put the whole operation together I put together, was so the industry wouldn't be able to get a hold on me. Originally, they used to attack me in my comments section because I wouldn't take money from the universities, and I wouldn't take equipment, and I wouldn't take their studies, and I wouldn't take their lecturers. I didn't need them. But they would say that I'm suspicious because everybody would take advantage of something like that. Anybody's reasonable. Well, the reason I didn't want to trust them is because when I looked at these universities, they were corrupt. And I'm not in this for their reasons. I'm in this for the reason that this destroys the integrity of our entire ecosystem and everybody's health. And then somebody has to pick a point. So, similar findings in dogs, all the dogs died of plutonium with multiple tumors. So you can expect the same thing in humans. This is the Navy, U.S. Navy study in New Mexico. But that's not true, is it, Navy? It was actually true that the human kidneys are 50 times less efficient than the animal kidneys are at removing plutonium. 50 times less, not 50%, but 50 times more vulnerable. You're 50 times more likely to die than all the dogs that died of multiple tumors. And then the biggest kick in the can is curium isotopes are the biggest byproduct of the radioactive fuel rod, which brings me back to this one. So 20 million particles, this is in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, this is a Canadian study, covering the United States and Canada, North America. So iodine-131, 20 million particles, when you're talking about particles, you're talking about fuel particulates. So it's not iodine, it's curium isotopes we're talking about. You don't want to say that because it's got a 24,000-year half-life. Iodine's got a 7-day half-life. But even if it was iodine, which is not, and we know that because we know how the ratio works, there's a 10-to-1 ratio of iodine-132 for every 131 that's produced. By the way, 131 is incredibly effective ionizing and radiating the thyroid glands of every species and every human, and that's what it's done. So everybody's making permanent radioactive hormones now because of the nuclear industry, and particularly because of the pulse event in Japan at Fukushima. So there's 10 times more 132, 30 times more 133, 31 times more iodine 129s. The 132 and the 133 are 9 times more effective. The incredibly effective iodine 131, which was prolific, is at ionizing, radiating, and permanently causing your thyroid to permanently produce radioactive hormones. amongst many other things. And your hormones regulate the function of your body, and they're not designed for anthropogenic. In fact, there's no species on the planet with an autoimmune trigger that can defend against it. So then, think about this study here. Highly radioactive glass. Now remember, we just went through an absurd amount of studies on radiation therapy, and radiation injuries and stuff like that, right? So the idea of that was to show you everything is known about this. They know everything about this. So when I'm showing you the evidence of it, actually, the distribution, you got to appreciate what I'm telling you is true. You need to take this serious. And I have 1,000 of these presentations on my site. So how much evidence would you like? Because I can assure you, you'll find it everywhere you look, in every video you watch, in every video. And the reason being is because we need you to stand tall. You need to get in the right set of mind, get educated, protect yourself, your friends and your families and your loved ones, and educate your population. And we need to push back, and we got to be pushing back now. Now, we're running out of time. In 2 years' time, AI will absolutely delete me. Highly radioactive glass rained on Tokyo. 500 trillion atoms a kilogram found significant consequences for the human health. Significant. Our ideas of health implications should change. Like, to even frame it that way, instead of, like, they should be pulling the hair out of their head screaming, we're in danger. You're in danger. Wake up. Wake up. This was a French government study, the IRSN, contamination of the environment. This was a spiked. See the second sentence? Spiked to over 1 million times normal. And per cubic meter of air, it was 1 million to 10 million atoms of cesium-137 per cubic meter of air. That model is based on 9 days. This model is based on 31 days. This is approaching day 10 right here. Day 15 is right now, and approaching day 20. Your whole planet is covered, day 20 right there. And it goes up to day 30, stops, but the plume doesn't go away for 300 years. So you're approaching day 30 right there. So now you got, this is cesium-137, cesium-1, you got an invisible snowstorm. So now here's the right way you're supposed to look at it. Just think of an invisible snowstorm. Think of it as every fuel pool does the same thing, by the way, after the first 30 days. And then it's like that forever because of the fuel pools. Every fuel pool is doing it. And you're adding more fuel to the pool every day. Just let me start that again. So think of radiation fallout as a snowstorm that starts wherever, point A. And by day 10, this is what the snowstorm looks like. It never stops snowing. The snow never goes away and it never melts. This is day 20 right here. The snow never goes away. The snow never melts and never stops snowing. And now you have 1,000 fuel pools also doing that. And this model is based on venting, is not based on the loss of the inventories. Okay. Are we ready? So here's another study of xenon. So this is documented. This is unassailable. This is incontestable. They knew the reactors were melting down in 50 minutes. Now, we had a lot of documentation of abnormalities in the marine life. And because I used to be a commercial diver and a man of the ocean, I grew up on the ocean, I decided to do the most criminal thing you could do was go out and survey the coastline. And I was under siege the entire time. I built the operation from scratch. I begged and borrowed and stole until I built an operation that could take me out there and bring me back and do it year after year. And then I begged and borrowed and stole every opportunity I got. I was shameless so I could get back out there And I knew at the end of every month that my pension could get me fuel, the worst case scenario. But I had to get out there first. And so what I ended up doing was I'd done 6 years from Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska. And I lied and manipulated, deceived people. That's what the official story is, but the reality of it is quite different. We raised enough money, we built an operation, we went out there and we surveyed the coast for 4 to 5 to 6 months a year because we were afraid nobody would fund me to get back out there. And the reason I went back out there year after year was to see if the species to your left recovered. They were missing after the first year we discovered. And we done the whole coastline, which was the worst thing a person can do because I was prosecuted. I was given 6 gag orders, we call them 6 gold medals. 6 gag orders to protect the assets that were lying about the destruction. I was vilified and demonized and still am, smeared and marginalized, hated, absolutely hated. I'm still hated. I couldn't care less. I'm worried about you, not them. I already know what they're like. I showed you the studies earlier. They don't care about you. I actually do. The species to the left didn't recover. I went out for 5 more years to see if those species recovered. Is that a crime? Did I commit a crime against humanity by doing this? Apparently I did. A crime that warranted me getting censored right off the internet. I literally don't even exist. And I know that they're going to do that to me. I know that I'll be attacked. I know that I'll be destroyed. I know they'll make up rumors. They'll make up stuff about me. But anybody knows me, knows that I have integrity and knows that no matter what's said about me, I'm actually here with good intentions. And everything I do is with good intentions. And I do it, the things I'm doing, which is unorthodox in every sense and shape of the word. Nobody's ever done an educational program on nuclear before because you have 1,000 public relation firms will wreck you. And they are ruthless. There is nothing they won't make up about you. And if you're honest, then you can stand that beat down. And I've been beat down so many times. It's absurd how many times I had to claw my way back. It's absurd how many times I had to build this operation back up. It's absurd. It's shameful. It's humiliating, but we don't have another option. The species to your left are officially exterminated. You'll never take the pictures again. We went back for 5 extra years. What else could I do? I gave it up. And my health deteriorated significantly ever since. And I at one point, I was going to die that day. A team flew in from the mainland and gave me 7 stents. 7 stents in my heart valves, and then kicked me loose again. And I got out of the hospital the very next day, 21 days in the ICU. I was on my feet, home the next day, done a show that night. Then I slept for like 4 days, and I got up and got a shower. In that order. And did I slow down since? I can't remember slowing down. I got injured a couple more times. Took some major falls this winter. Shut me down for like 5 weeks. Busted me up good. As soon as I was able to stand sitting up straight in the chair, I'm back here kicking the can down the road again. Why? Because I'm watching an extinction event play out, and I'm terrified. The species to your left are exterminated. That's not an opinion. That's a fact. But now we're seeing the extinction of the species. So this story was 2022. It's much more severe now. Now it's 60% of the gray whales. Is that about? Yeah, the gray whales now have died off. There's like 12,000 left or something out of 27,000. We're seeing the same things. I'm like the gray whales. If you go to my videos, you go back to my videos, you see all the thumbnails, my live streams. You see all the thumbnails of the whale die-offs. My goodness. The food chain is broken, right? They're dying worldwide of starvation. Nobody even thought that could happen. Nobody's seen that pre-Fukushima. And I'm still under siege. Did a marine heat wave cause 7,000 humpback whales to starve? That's a question. That's a conjecture. That's an opinion. That's not a fact. Yes, there is a heat wave, but it was caused by Fukushima broke the food chain. Because the phytoplankton, the basis of the food chain, the oxygen chain, the carbon sequestering chain, lives at the surface. And where does radiation first enter the ocean? At the surface. And so if you wipe out the basis of the food chain, the oxygen chain, the carbon sequestering chain, what eventually happens in increments over the next number of decades, I wonder? That's a question you don't want an answer to. So 7,000 whales on top of a humpback whales. It's not just gray whales, not just humpback whales, it's every species. Because we broke the food chain. So we broke the food chain. Now every species of whales is showing up. And these are all these whales I'm going to show you have died in the last year of starvation and they're worldwide. We've never seen rib cages and spinal columns sticking up and the entire head bone protruding, the shoulder blades protruding. We've never seen that. Rib cages, actually, this is a sperm whale sticking up in the air. We've never seen that. So the skin has got no blubber, no fat, no muscle. That's all been consumed by the body because the ocean is able to sustain their weights. See? And so we've never seen this before in any mammal or animal. And then the skin is so skinny because that was the last nutrients the body could use up, and it did, that it droops over the rib cage. It's surreal. That blue whale up there, if you were stood on the other side of that, I could see your knees, right? Well, that should weigh the same as 10 transport trucks. Let that sink in. It should weigh the same. It's 100 foot long. It should weigh the same as a transport truck. It should be 400,000 pounds. There's maybe 25,000 or 30,000 pounds there, and only because of the skeletons, the skin, and the organs. But the spinal column is like a 3D printed screw up of a whale, right? Where you never gave them any blubber or fat or muscles or. That's a fin whale over there. That's the second biggest whale in the world. That can get up close to 300,000 pounds. You can see the spinal column. You can see the peanut head. When you see that peanut head on top of that, you can see the peanut head up there, the peanut head here. That's the skin right down tight to the bones. You can see all the bones protruding and throughout the body. This is another blue whale. It's these starvation. That bride's whale should weigh 90,000 pounds. And I'm not saying what I'm saying there tonight about me, poor Dana. I'm stating a fact. That's all I'm doing. Don't worry about poor Dana. Dana will take care of himself. Mentally anyway and emotionally. I have no illusions of how evil the enemy is. I've been exposed to it and a subject to it for 25 years. So I'm very aware how wicked and immoral and how criminal these people actually are. That whale up there still gets me today. That's about 4 months ago. That was the only picture that came out. This was from an India newspaper. So in Canada, but they denigrated the quality of the picture because that would terrify any academic. They didn't want the academics, the marine biologists, seeing the true horror of what they were looking at because they need them alive for the nuclear industry. That blue whale up there should weigh 200 tons, 400,000 pounds. That one maybe weighs 70,000 pounds. It's a 90-foot whale. There's another Indian beach. And that showed up shortly after this one about 4 months ago. That only weighs about 1,800 pounds, but should weigh 88,000 pounds. And so that got used in a couple of these thumbnails. This is a 2-year-old humpback. That's a 2-year-old humpbacks. They're different parts of the world. And the emaciation, I thought, was the madness. But when you look at this whale up there, the gray whale, and you look at that bride's whale in particular, You can imagine what it really looks like with a high-quality picture. We assumed they lowered the quality when the picture entered the Canadian internet, because people like me, I could weaponize a high-quality picture like that effectively. Every whale they're finding is dying of severe starvation. Severe starvation. That blue whale, there's nothing there, only bones and organs and very thin skin. Nobody dreamt that a whale could denigrate. Now, remember all those studies I showed you for the first 40 minutes or something? And they have radiation illnesses. So there's still some food in the ocean, but they have radiation. They have like they have leukemia, basically. They're producing more white blood cells than red blood cells, and their body is not able to uptake nutrition. So even if there is food there, they still can't uptake it. There is food still out there. There's no doubt about it. Fishing boats are out there fishing. But then why are all these animals showing up worldwide in death stage starvation? Because it is missing, that absolutely, for the most part. Particularly, most of these whales are dependent upon krill or smaller invertebrates, right? They're dependent upon the basis of the food chain, for sure, right? The phytoplankton and the zooplanktons. But we're seeing, this is worldwide. The rib cage is sticking out. We've never seen anything like it. The peanut heads, we've never, like pre-Fukushima, we've never seen none of this. So, is it time for a last goodbye to the man-made atom? Because look what the atom has brought us. What I just showed you what the atom is doing to us. It's not your friend. It's not any birds or insects or mammals or animals. It's not any plants or trees or floras or faunas or bacteria or fungus or biota. It's not the friend of anybody, including the nuclear industry. It attacks everything with replicating cells. So it should be banned, like you would ban a weapon of indiscriminate like cluster bombs, for instance, right? Because it's indiscriminate, and the bombs might explode 2 years later when the kids are playing in the field. Is it time for a last goodbye to the atom that never brought peace? And not only never brought peace, it not only never brought peace. If you scroll down my videos, you'll see those thumbnails. See those thumbnails there? Go watch them videos. 155 views, really. 131 views. And these videos, well, that one's a little bit, that one probably shouldn't be there. A little bit wild on that one. Before donating to Sea Shepherd, should Greenpeace consider force-feeding whales? Ship strikes are responsible for all insects and bird deaths. I'm sorry, whale deaths. Aliens from UFOs. That whales are so emaciated, they look like aliens. Mass species die off whales, birds, insects. If you come over to my playlist and you go to die-offs, mass species die off, there's an 11-hour video. Oh, that showed up, but my other one didn't show up. Remember that one I done where I had Trump in a 30-second loop for like 12 hours? Saying he was anti-nuclear or anti-war. Fukushima, 15 years of radioactive fallout. I'd ignore that one. So there's 64 videos. 64 videos of species die-off. 64 videos documenting the species die-off that's covered in the medias. And I also provide incredible amount of documentation and evidence for my assertions. Is it time for a last goodbye to the atomic plague? And I think is that what the title should have been actually tonight, was it? Because this is an atomic plague is what we're talking about. Radiation is a plague. So as the peaceful atom fades, the truth remains. There is no peaceful atoms. That's the one thing that is terrifying, is there's no such thing as a peaceful atom. How many insects does it take to feed hungry baby birds. 61 nests needed 5 million insects to raise their fledglings over 23 days. 61 nests, which meant each fledgling was eating around 700 insects a day. Who we got here? Hello? Hello? That's Calm Down Charlie. That's Tepco's little rat attacking me again. And, they pretend that I don't want to have a debate with them, but these are not people, these are assassins, character assassins. Worldwide decline in quality and diversity of insects in the light of land use and climate. So if you go to my playlist, go to my live and scroll back to where the whales videos, and then you'll see plummeting insect numbers, plummeting insect numbers, single imminent collapse of nature. And that's a 3-hour show of evidence, of documented evidence, unassailable evidence. And you see all of these are full of the same stuff. So, I know I come across rough sometimes, but if you walk the mile in my shoes, the only way you have to have a very thick skin to survive trying to talk about this narrative, because the industry is so vicious. Like the caller, the creature, the stalker who just called in to interrupt us, he's been stalking me for over 10 years. He's Yoshida Mashada from the Tokyo Bureau in Chicago Division, affectionately known as Calm Down Charlie, because he's always an arrogant, hubris, pompous prick. He doesn't have a single redeeming quality to his name. And we don't worry about stuff like that. And we're going to close the show out, I do believe. I know James is on vacation right now. Plus he's hurt by. And he's not at home. And so this is, now I played one of his songs earlier tonight. You'll find a playlist of his nuclear music anybody can listen to in my playlist of this type. And this song included will be in there. Fantastic song. And the weekend, I got parts showed up, so I'm going to work all weekend and try to install my parts. And there's another, going to rain heavy tomorrow. And so that'll be cool. I was out today on the bike for about 2.5 hours looking for insects or birds. No insects whatsoever. It was 18 degrees or something here, Celsius. And no birds. No birds on the side of the road looking for insects or anything else. No birds crossing the road. There's normally 46 million migratory birds that also come here at this time every year to raise their fledglings. The biggest migratory seabird spot on the planet, where they come here to raise their fledglings. So they're here for many months. It's quite a spectacle. They've been missing since 2019, post-Fukushima, right? We're going to play Nuclear Exceptionalism. You'll find that picture and in the playlist of the anti-nuclear music playlist. And it's at the same site if you want to look it up yourself as the first song. We put a link in the description, less than a gram. You have a great night and a great weekend. Hugs for you, your friends, your families, your loved ones, your communities, and go through those studies for the first 40 minutes again if you're not familiar, and get familiar with that stuff, and take screen captures of it, and win any argument or debate for the rest of your life with that little tiny bit of documentation that they know everything about radiation, illnesses, and diseases, and they're just ruthless scum who hide away like cowards because that's what their parents were and that's what their children will be, and that's what they were destined to be. Hugs for everybody. Have a great night.
They said it was clean, too cheap to meter. Built the dome, then cooked the beaker. Said the rod was safe as sealed in drums, but left them leaking out of Idaho slums. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear's not dumb. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear is fun. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear has won. Hallelujah, nuclear exceptionalism is done. They chase the sun, all fusion proud. Ignore the barrels stacked in clouds. Promise stars in every socket, while curium settled in the market. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear's not dumb. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear is fun. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear has won. Hallelujah, nuclear exceptionalism is done. Chart is clean, while whales rolled up beside the submarine. Blame the algae, blame the rain, but never trace the gamma chain. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear's not dumb. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear is fun. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear has won. Hallelujah, nuclear exceptionalism is done. Now the rods are rusting, the record spins. Mama warned them, too many sins. Keep your son, keep your lab coat pride, till you fix the way